Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. Poor Britney Griner. She wanted to spend some time in Russia, but I guess something must have gotten lost in translation because now the Russians have got her doing time in Russia. Britney Griner is now an unwilling guest of Vladimir Putin, and she's been that way for months now. And the US government hasn't really been doing much of anything about it because, honestly, they could care less. And to be blunt, I don't either, but I do think that there is a lesson to be learned here, a few salient points that could be gleaned. The gay community has not been there for Britney Griner. She's been one of the highest profile LGBT athletes and advocates in professional sports, certainly in the United States. And yet the LGBT groups are all but MIA. They may have put out a tweet or put out a letter of support, but they aren't making a cause célèbre out of her. They're certainly not giving it the old college try. I'm pretty sure there's been more LGBT interest in Roe v. Wade getting struck down than getting Britney Griner out of Russia, and that's not a joke, by the way. So, after getting arrested for having had cannabis oil or whatever found in her luggage, Britney Griner has now pleaded guilty to drug smuggling charges. It's ironic. Britney Griner's been one of the main ones complaining about how she and the rest of the WNBA get no respect from their black male counterparts, and her WNBA pals often claim that they make as much, if not more, money playing overseas than they do in the US, so why should they spend so much time in America when they're not being respected and valued, etc.? And yet, here it is overseas in Russia where Britney Griner was playing, and she got arrested, and now could be looking at up to 10 years. Right now, Britney Griner's lawyers are hoping that the judge on the case will go easy on her. They hope that since she had no drugs in her system, the court will take that into account and hopefully give her a lighter sentence. But where Vladimir Putin is concerned, these kind of things are not legal at all. They're political. There's a war in Ukraine right now. The United States is floating weapons and training to the Ukrainians, so Vladimir is clearly hoping that he can use this as an opportunity to exchange Griner for some Russian spies that the US has locked up. And it wouldn't be the first time. In April of this year, the U.S. exchanged a white American, Trevor Reed, for a Russian prisoner. Trevor Reed had been in Russia since 2019, and in July 2020, he was convicted of endangering the life and health of Russian police officers in an altercation. So the U.S. wasn't exactly tripping over its shoelaces trying to get him back. And on a side note, Trevor Reed used to be a U.S. Marine, so he wasn't just some tourist, he was a soldier, and yet the U.S. had been in no hurry at all to get him back home. That's how they treat a white veteran. And Trevor's parents are still resentful about that, by the way. They claim to be neglected by the U.S. military and the government on this one. Speaking of neglect, the Caucasian Nitwit Network website mentions another white American, Paul Whelan, who's also a prisoner in Russia right now. In fact, this CNN piece from April talking about Reed's release mentions Whelan before they mention Britney Griner. This Whelan guy is an interesting case. Like Reed, he also is a former Marine. The Russians arrested him in 2018 on espionage charges, which he denies. In 2020, he was sentenced to 16 years imprisonment. But what's strange is Whelan is also an Irish, British, and Canadian citizen. So he's a citizen of 4 countries, yet he's calling on the United States alone to get him out. He's in what is called a labor camp in Mordovia, where he works in a clothing factory. His family is petitioning Biden to get him released. They're disappointed that apparently when Trevor Reed was released, Paul Whelan wasn't released also. This week, it's been announced that Bill Richardson has been asked to go to Russia and try to see if he can finesse the Ruskies into letting Britney and Whelan go. I honestly can't understand why Biden didn't let Messy Jesse go instead. I'm serious, by the way. Jackson's track record on these things is better than Richardson, who has no track record on these things at all. Well, if Richardson does as good a job negotiating for Griner's release as he did running for president in 2008, I think Britney better ask if the gulag she's going to has a basketball team, because she's going to have plenty of time to practice her free throw shots, and her three-pointers, and her passing, and her slam dunks, and everything else. On a side note, Biden reportedly had a conversation with Griner's life partner, Sherelle. God only knows if the senile old codger even remembers doing it. He also had one of his staff members write a letter to Britney Griner, which Biden then signed and claimed he wrote it. And while I'm sure that for Griner and those who are hoping to get her released soon, this may be encouraging, If the U.S.'s track record on these kind of incidents is anything to judge by, I wouldn't be getting my hopes up. Now, there's something else that needs to be discussed, and I'm not trying to be messy here, but there's a reality that black people better understand. You're black, anywhere in the world. You can identify as LGBT first, or identify as intersectional first, or identify as an immigrant first, or whatever. That's a game you can only play with yourself under white supremacy. You are black, and that's the only thing that matters under white supremacy, and trying to wish that away is a fool's errand. None of these white supremacists care how you choose to identify yourself, because they have a preponderance of violent force and organized violence at that on their side. As far as they're concerned, whatever they consider you to be, that's what it is, because they have the force of violence to back it up. Tiger Woods was so eager to deny being black, he made up his own specific ethnic group, Caucasian. Well, when those white cops arrested him, they put black on the arrest report. He found out the hard way Negroes can try to escape being black by claiming to be something else, but the rest of the world won't play along with their denial. And the only reason most of these people deny being black is because they're desperately trying to make the dominant society feel comfortable around them. And since nothing makes the dominant society more uncomfortable than a black person, they'll go overboard trying to declare themselves as being anything but black, anything else other than black first. But the racists aren't fooled. And another thing, black people in general, when you go overseas, you better start understanding anti-black racism is global, even in Africa. See, most black people have never been outside the U.S., and for the few who go, they think because other countries aren't as psychopathically racist as the white supremacists in the U.S., that means these other countries are okay. But they're not. True, these other countries didn't have slave plantations, but that's not because they didn't want to, it's only because they didn't have the boats to put our ancestors on. But you'll notice all these other countries have some form or another of racial segregation, specifically against black people. And when it comes to whatever breakdown of ethnic groups they got in their countries, they always make sure that the one-drop rule applies where the hell they are. Whatever country you want to talk about, I can guarantee you there's some grotesque display of anti-blackness there. I can guarantee these countries where there's practically no black people at all, yet and still they all have some racial slurs specifically for black people. And this in countries where black people are practically non-existent. So to deny that is to deny reality. Yes, the United States is by far the most virulently anti-black racist country on earth, but the other countries aren't much better, especially in Europe and Asia, and geographically Russia is both. You got black folks who stroll through these other countries like it's Disneyland, and these Negroes walking around being casual wind up becoming casualties. You have no friends, not here, not overseas, not anywhere, so you better be on guard. You see, Britney Griner conned herself into thinking that she could get a little loose in Russia, that those white supremacists over there in Moscow saw her differently than the white supremacists in D.C. Well, she's finding out the truth the hard way. God only knows if the lesson will stick. Assuming that Griner does get freed in an expeditious manner, does anyone want to lay odds on whether she'll go back to Russia to play ball again? You know, I would say that if she ever went back to Russia again, she must be high, but that's part of what got her in this fix in the first place. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Tavon Boone, Rose Arnold, Vashon Hurst, Eddie Newsom, and Bomber 777. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.